Hello and welcome to another episode of Game Theory, the number one MMA DFS prep show in all of the land. Who am I? I am your host, M.O.N.K, aka the Monkmatician, and in this very episode, guys and girls, we have got I would say banger. I usually say a banger of a card, but I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said that. It's a card. We have a card here, UFC 73, headlined by Mackenzie, Dern, and Angie Hill. We've also got Fluffy Hernandez going against Edmund Shahbazyan, Loopy Godinez going against Emily Ducote, Joaquin Buckley coming back, Michael Johnson. We've got Borshchev versus Maheshate, Double K, Karolina Kowalkiewicz as well, and Natalia Silva, Chase Hooper, a bunch of other decent fighters here. It's just the fights overall aren't that great, but guys, we will try to do what we always do and make the best out of every single card. So be sure to stick around, hit the like, hit the sub, and you will have as many DFS stats as I can give you in the next hour or so for UFC Vegas 73. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into the stats.
Show's about to start!
First fight of the night, UFC Vegas 73. We have got 8K Themba Gorimbo going against 8,200 Takashi Sato. This one is an interesting fight here. We'll start with Sato, who is the favorite here, 8,200. Like I said, the first thing I noticed is that he is getting outpaced in every single aspect of the fight. Overall, by about 2 points a minute, at distance by about 0.3 points a minute, but inside the distance, over 4 points a minute, guys. Basically 4.5 points a minute, he's getting outpaced. That means his opponents are scoring 4.5 points a minute more than he is inside the distance. DraftKings points per win, pretty good number there. DraftKings points per loss, very bad. He's got a very low floor, 2.28 strikes landed per minute, very low volume for Sato, 60% takedown defense, spends 30% of his total fight time fighting inside the distance, controls only 8.5% of that. Again, very high ceiling, very low floor. One of his 2 wins at the weight class has gone over triple digits, 92.5 bonus points per win. A very good strength of schedule for Sato, 76.68. You want this number to be about 70. Anything lower is bad. Anything lower is bad. Anything higher is decent. Last 5 opponents pro record 79-22, and he has yet to make the optimal lineup in 2 tries since 2021. And I should explain the bottom here and the top. I've got their height, reach, age, and stance. Their professional record, UFC record, L5, his last 5 record exact. If you'll notice, this says 3 rounds welterweight. That is a 3-round welterweight fight. This is, and exact is the record that this fighter has in 3-round welterweight fights. So whatever the fight is, that's what the exact record is. His finish rate, decisions, and his AWI, his ass whoop index. You want this to be, above 0. 0 is a draw. He's negative 13. So not great numbers for Takashi Sato, especially offensively. Themba Gorimbo, he fought AJ Fletcher, lost via submission. He's 10-4, 0-1 in the UFC, 3-2 in his last 5. Overall, he's outscoring his opponents from everywhere, so the exact opposite of what we saw from Takashi Sato. No wins yet, only 1 UFC fight. Did score 22, almost 23 points in that loss and gave up only 87. Landed less than 1 strike a minute. That is a bit concerning. No takedowns were thrown to defend. Spent 80% of his time, almost 81% of his total fight time fighting inside the distance, controlled 37.5% of that time. Very low ceiling, okay floor. No wins, obviously. Strength of schedule is okay, 68, and did not make the optimal lineup. So we've got an interesting fight here. I am really not looking forward to rostering Takashi Sato, but it is against a newcomer ish to the UFC. Only 1 fight, spent about 6 minutes or so in the cage. Did Themba Gorimbo. Man, I don't know what to do here. Honestly, this is a really close fight to call. I'm probably going to have more Gorimbo rostered because Sato just has not scored well at all, whether it be his last 5, whether it be in his career or at the weight class. So only once, or I believe only once, he put up triple digits, and that was a crazy first minute, I believe, finish. So I'm really not expecting that to happen with Themba Gorimbo. So give me probably more Gorimbo, the underdog here, than Takashi Sato. And in the second fight of the night, we've got our most expensive fighter, Natalia Silva, $9,700 here against Victoria Leonardo. I mean, I don't know how we're going to be rostering Natalia Silva, but let's look at her stats at least. She's 14, 5-1, 2-0 in the UFC, 5-0 in her last 5, and in 3-round flyweight fights, she is 2-0. We've got Orthodox versus Southpaw matchup, with Silva being the Southpaw. Let's see, she outscores her opponents by more than 2-1. At distance, it's 4-1, and inside the distance, she is still outscoring him, but it's much, much closer. DraftKings points per win in her 2 wins so far, 85.3, no losses. So yeah, not a very good number, just 85.3. And in fact, if you will bear with me, we will check to see how she scored exactly. 85.3 against Bleda and 85.2 against Double J Jasmine Jasudavicius. Not Jeff Jarrett, sorry to get you guys excited.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, that is so.
But yeah, so not scoring very well at all. 5.33 points or strikes landed per minute. 92.5% takedown defense. Spends 45% of her total fight time fighting in the distance and controls 28% of that time. Very low ceiling and a decent floor. Has yet to score over 100 as we just saw. Strength of schedule 64, so not great. And she has made the optimal just 1 time out of 2 tries. Must have been an interesting little optimal to make it with only 85. She was 7,100, that's why, against Jasmine Jasudavicius, and got the win, put up 85, so that's where she gets to be optimal. Victoria Leonardo, 9-4 as a pro, 1-2 in the UFC, 3-2 in her last 5. She's getting outpaced overall, outpaced at distance, but inside the distance she is outscoring her opponents by almost a full point per minute. DraftKings points per win. This fight is a big fade for me, guys. 77.5 points in her 1 UFC win. Only put up 21 in her loss, but gave up almost 109 on average over her 2 losses, did Leonardo. Lands 2.9 strikes per minute, 71.5% takedown defense, so that is respectable. It's no 92 like Natalia Silva, but 72 is pretty good. Spends 48% of her fight time inside the distance, controls 70% of that fight time, so a much better control game than Natalia Silva has shown so far. Very low ceiling, decent floor. 73 strength of schedule, so several points better than Silva, almost 10 points better. Actually, I'll say almost 9 points better. 35-10 is her last 5 opponents pro record. And she has also made the optimal lineup in her 1 win. I believe that would have been against Mandy Bum. She was 7,800 and scored 77.58 points and made the optimal lineup. That is crazy. So that must have been a very low scoring card. So yeah, we have nothing that I am really excited for as far as DraftKings stats for this fight. Obviously, I'm picking Natalia Silva to win, but I don't think she's going to score very well at all. In the UFC, let's see, Leonardo has been KO TKO twice in both of her losses, so Silva could get something going inside the distance. Maybe I should think twice here, but you know, Jailton, when he was at 97, I mean, I had a ton of him. Silva, I'm not going to have anywhere close to that, so she's just far too expensive. I'll probably have like 15 to 20% of her in case she comes out here and just starches Leonardo immediately, but I really don't expect her ownership to be incredibly high. Because it is a women's MMA fight. Women's flyweight fights are still very, very good to target, making the optimal lineup 53.66% of the time. That is now 3rd best overall out of any weight class. So be sure to not sleep on these women's flyweight fights. And yeah, I will have a bit of Silva, probably not any of Leonardo at 6,500. That's just, it's going to be an anomaly if she does anything. Next up, we've got underdog Chase Hooper, 7,900, going against Nick Fiore, 8,300. We'll start with Fiore. He got absolutely smashed against Mateusz Rebeshki, I believe. I think his first name is Mateusz. I don't remember. Rebeshki, in his first fight, completely outpaced from every aspect. I mean, inside the distance, it was ugly. Only put up 23 points, allowed 104, 2.27 strikes landed per minute, 25% takedown defense, big red flag. Spent 60% of his fight time fighting inside the distance, controlled 6%. That's it, of that fight time. No wins. Let's see, 54.8 strength of schedule. That is extremely poor. Not the worst on the card by any means, but very close. You know, it is a very bad number. Like I said, you want to be at 70, and we're not even at 55 here. So his last 5 opponents pro record is actually 50-54. And he has yet, obviously, to make the optimal lineup. 6-1 as a pro, I should also mention, is Fiore. 4-1 in his last 5. Another Orthodox versus Southpaw matchup. Southpaws do carry the advantage there since 2021, winning about 54% of the time. Chase Hooper, 7,900, 11-3-1, 3-3 in the UFC, 2-3 in his last 5. He is going up a weight class to lightweight. He has fought all of his fights at featherweight, and he is now not going to make that extreme weight cut, and see if that helps with his power or anything up at 155. So I'm excited to check out what he can do at 155. Overall, these are actually his career stats. Obviously, I have no lightweight stats. His exact record is 0-0 because he has never had a lightweight fight in the UFC. So these are his UFC career stats here. Overall pacing, he is just outpacing his opponents by about 0.2 points a minute. At distance, getting outpaced by 2 points a minute, but inside the distance, it's about 1.5 points better for Chase Hooper per minute. DraftKings points per win in his 3 UFC wins, 109.62, so a very good number. One of those was like 140, so it is skewed a little bit. When he loses, he scores almost 30 and gives up 101. 3.72 strikes landed per minute, 33% takedown defense, so neither guy has shown great takedown defense at all. Now, that said, Chase Hooper is obviously a jiu-jitsu guy, so he does not mind being on the ground and does not mind being taken down. 54% of his time fought inside the distance, and he has controlled just over 50% of that fight time. Incredibly high ceiling. Like I said, he put up a ridiculous score against I don't remember who, 137, and a very low floor, though. So an okay GPP play here at a dog price, in my opinion, with very high ceiling against a guy who only has 1 UFC fight, but a very low floor. So it is a bit risky as well. 2 of his 3 wins over 100 points, 60 bonus points per win, 67 strength of schedule, which is not very good, but it's 13 points better than his opponent. So I'd say it's decent for this matchup here. And Chase has made the optimal lineup in 1 out of 3 fights. Obviously, it's most likely the one he put up like 165,000 points. So yeah, long story short, I like Chase Hooper here. Not something I usually say, but he does come through for DraftKings. In 2 out of his 3 fights, like I said, over 100 points. Going against a relative newcomer here. I like Chase Hooper, and I like that we get him at the dog price. I'll probably have a bit of both sides of this one, but honestly, Hooper I'm going to have way more of. He's a dog, and Fiore has to prove it to me before I know even what he's capable of. I mean, like I said, he got manhandled in his first fight by Rebeshki, so I can't really pay the favorite price, $8,300 for that. So give me Chase Hooper, $7,900. We'll save some money and hopefully get a decent win here with Chase moving up to lightweight. Here we have Rodrigo Nascimento, $9,000 salary this week, going up against UFC veteran of the highest level, and I don't mean veteran as in skill level, I mean highest level as in age, because he is up there. Ilir Latifi, $7,200. In fact, Ilir is 39 years old. Let's start with him, actually. In his 3-round heavyweight fights, of which he has 3 of them, he's 2-1, 9-6 in the UFC, 2.91 points scored per minute, and gives up just 1.27 at distance. I mean, abysmal numbers. Nothing's happening in Latifi fights at distance, but he's still getting outworked 2-1. But inside the distance is where he shines. And I did mistype this Ilir Latifi, but I see the number here on my screen. Scores 3.63 points per minute inside the distance, allows 0.51 points per minute. So that's what, like 7-1. DraftKings points per win is very concerning, 73.41. This is lower than Leonardo and Silva. 73.5 points per win is extremely bad. In his loss, his one loss, he lost to Derek Lewis and scored more points than Lewis did. He scored 44 points in a loss. Lewis scored 40.6 in a win. I did double check that. Ridiculous. Anything could happen in Derek Lewis fights, and usually it's not good for DFS unless if it gets out of the first round. Latifi, very low volume in these 3 fights, 1.18 strikes landed per minute, 100% takedown defense, spends 56.5% of his fight time inside the distance, controls almost 95% of that time, has a very low ceiling, very high floor, as we've seen already. 73.27 strength of schedule is very good, and has yet to make the optimal lineup out of 2 tries at the division since 2021. So I'm not too impressed with Latifi here. I will probably be basically Xing him out of my lineup, not only because of his age. His DraftKings score is abysmal per win, even in his career, guys. This is just a heavyweight. Even in his career, what if we check that out? Ilir Latifi, DraftKings points per win in his career, 95.78, so almost 20 points better. But in his last 5, It's 73.4. Yeah, as we said, it's the same. He only has 2 wins in his last 5. So very low volume numbers there. Decent cash play possibly because he does have a very high floor. But again, that's only the score he got in his 1 loss. And I have no standard deviation because I only have that 1 loss. Rodrigo Nascimento getting outpaced at distance, getting outpaced by over 2 points a minute inside the distance. 3.31 scored to 1.65. Obviously, that is his game, is grappling. He is 9-1 as a pro, 3-1 in 3-round heavyweight fights. 93 points per win over those 3 wins. 0.4 points is what he put up in the loss. Not good. And he allowed 140, almost 141. So extremely bad defense there from Nascimento in his 1 loss. 4 strikes landed a minute. No takedowns attempted against him. 56% of his fight time inside the distance. And he controls, as you would imagine, 79% of that time. 100-point ceiling, very low floor. No wins over 100. So 3 wins, has yet to put up triple digits. 56.67 bonus points per win. Very good. But he's not scoring any other points besides bonus points, guys. 66.74 strength of schedule is okay, decent for what we've seen so far on this card. And he has made the optimal lineup once since 2021. That would have probably been against Alan Badeau when he put up 94.5 points. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to this fight from a DraftKings perspective. I will be under the field. Nascimento is the much more prolific scorer in the division, but he has yet to put up triple digits. So I just see this one going to a decision, probably a low-scoring decision, and I am fine going well under the field on this fight as a whole. I do like Nascimento to win, but I am not looking forward to rostering either side. Fight! And here we go in the welterweight division. We have Orion Cosce going against Gilbert Urbina. We have not seen Urbina since he fought in his debut fight back in August of 2021. So quite a long time for Mr. Urbina. We'll start with him. 625 days off to be exact. In that one fight, he did outpace his opponent, who was, I believe, yes, Brian Battle, but he ended up losing that fight. So outpace his opponent at distance, did not. He got doubled up at distance, but inside the distance put up 3 points a minute more than Battle did. Scored 36.4 in his loss and allowed less than 100. Very good. 6.21 strikes landed per minute. 0% takedown defense in that fight. Spent 55.5% of the time fighting inside the distance and did control well over 66% of that fight time. Low ceiling, decent floor, but again, those are just, the average for the division and then the points he scored in his loss because I have no standard deviation. I need more than 1 fight for that. 69 strength of schedule. Last 5 opponents are 40-11, and obviously he did not make the optimal lineup. Urbina 6-2 and 0-1 in the UFC. Orthodox versus Switch fight in this one here. Orion Cosce, 8,400 for Orion. He's 8-1 as a pro, 1-1 in the UFC, and he is the switch stance fighter, giving up 4 inches of height and 4 inches of reach. So that is interesting, and 1 year of age as well. So be sure to double check the metrics on that. Overall, he outscores his opponents by a point per minute. At distance leaves a lot to be desired. He's scoring 1.37 and allowing 5.24 points a minute. Inside the distance, much better, 3-1 over his opponent. Scored only 82 points in his DraftKings win and allowed 100 points when he lost. So not great numbers there. Less than 2 strikes landed a minute. 100% takedown defense. 71% of his fight time inside the distance in his 2 UFC fights. And he has controlled in a whopping 92.31% of that time. Very low ceiling, decent floor, but again, those are just his wins, losses, blah, blah, blah. We've been over that standard deviation. 30 points bonus per win. Here is the worst strength of schedule on the card, guys, and it is Orion Cosce, number 1 with a bullet, 48.41. 48 strength of schedule is just god awful. His last 5 opponents' record, 42-60. Yikes. And has yet to make the optimal lineup in 2 tries since 2021. Honestly, I think this is dog or pass, to be completely honest here. But Cosce does control a decent amount of the grappling time. It depends on if Urbina can get his grappling going against Cosce. That, I think, is going to be the deciding factor here. If he can, this should be an Urbina decision, I would imagine. But if he can't, if Cosce can stuff takedowns, man, Urbina is very high volume, or at least he showed that in the 7.5 minutes we've seen of him. But man, Cosce's 92% control time is decent. Who did he fight? Blood Diamond and Philip Rowe. And Blood Diamond went 15 minutes, so maybe that has something to do with it. I'm going to lean Gilbert Urbina because he's cheaper, and I think he can get his wrestling game going and could score pretty well in a win, in my opinion. Here we've got Double K, Karolina Kowalkiewicz going against Vanessa Demopoulos, the battle of the long-ass names. Kowalkiewicz is so long I had to just put Karolina on the side over here. It wouldn't even fit. 8,500 for Karolina, who's 14-7 as a pro, 7-7 in the UFC, and 7-7 in 3-round strawweight fights. 37 years old here. Overall, she's getting outpaced by half a point per minute. At distance, she's getting outpaced by 0.4 points a minute. And inside the distance, it's even worse than that. 0.85 points per minute. Scores only 86 points per win over her 7 wins, guys. That is a very, very low average. Only 20 per loss and gives up 102 per loss over 7 losses. So she's given up too many points and scoring not enough. 5.34 strikes landed a minute, 75% takedown defense are both good numbers. Spends 30% of her fight time fighting inside the distance, controls less than 39% of that time. Low ceiling, decent floor. Only one of her 7 wins, guys, at 3-round strawweight for Kowalkiewicz has been triple digits. Just one. 35.71 bonus points per win. A decent strength of schedule at 71.59. And she has made the optimal lineup in 1 of her 3 fights since 2021. Let's see who that was against. It would have been Felice Herrig, 112.5. Felice retired. That was her retirement fight, guys. So Karolina, the only time she scored anything close to decent was when she beat a retiring Felice Herrig. So I assume Vanessa Demopoulos is not retiring after this fight. Speaking of, she is 7,700, 9-4 as a pro, 3-1 in the UFC, 3-0 in 3-round strawweight fights. Her first fight was at flyweight, I believe, so those stats are not included. She is outscoring her opponents by almost a point per minute. At distance, not so much. It's 2-1 for her opponents. But inside the distance, 4.5 points a minute, and allowing just 0.6 points a minute back at her. 87 points per win, very, very low. I mean, it might as well be the exact same as Karolina's 86, and scores. Her opponents score 27 when she does win. 3.86 strikes landed per minute, 100% takedown defense in these 3 fights. Spends 42% of her fight time fighting inside the distance, controls a whopping 89, almost 90% of the total grappling time. That is very, very good considering she has, let's see, 47 minutes of total fight time, 47 and a half, and she spent 42% of that time in the distance, controlling a ton of it. So good on ya, Vanessa Demopoulos. Less than 100 point ceiling is never something you want to see. No wins over 100 yet in the weight class, guys, again. So we've had 10 fights between these two at the weight class, and we have 1 of them that has gone over 100 points. And again, that was against a retiring fighter. 50 bonus points per win, 69 strength of schedule, so we're almost at an acceptable level, but not quite. A palindromic last 5 opponent pro record, 41-14. And Vanessa has made the optimal lineup in 1 of her 3 fights. I'm assuming it was the Oliveira fight. She was 8K, but she also put up 91.6 at 8,300 against Silvana Gomez-Juarez. So it was one of those two. I don't like this fight for DraftKings. I'm probably picking against my girl, and I'm going to go with Demopoulos. Yes, I do like Karolina, but I am going to go with Demopoulos here, not only because of the age. I think the grappling is the main reason I'm going to go with her. So she usually finds herself in precarious situations and then works herself out of it, either flipping, to some sort of sub or just gaining positions with a reversal. So give me Vanessa Demopoulos. But yeah, for DraftKings, I'm thinking this is probably a big fade. I'll play a little bit of Demopoulos at 7,700, but I will probably not have much of Karolina at all. Like I said, the only time she ever scored well was against Herrig. So give me Demopoulos, the dog here, but I'm not looking forward to rostering this one. Next, we have a welterweight scrap between Maheshate and Slava Claus here. Vyacheslav Borshchev, 8,800 for Borshchev. 6-3 as a pro, 1-2 in the UFC after getting started off hot in the promotion, 1-2 in 3-round lightweight fights. Overall, he's been getting outpaced. We found out Slava Claus cannot grapple. Mike Davis absolutely put it to him. But before that, Mark D. Casey showed us what the game plan was, and that's all you have to do here against Borshchev, which is probably why they matched him up with a striker in Maheshate. 2 points a minute is what he scores, allowing almost 6 per minute. At distance, he's doing just fine. 3.75 scoring to 1.5 allowed. Inside the distance, it is basically 0 to everything. 0.82 points a minute to 7.5 allowed. Absolutely ridiculous. He can't stop a takedown. He can't get up, and he can't get control time of his own. When he put up 112. When he loses, on average, over his 2 losses, 120.69 is what he allows. 2.69 points per minute, 31% takedown defense, 68.73% of his fight time fighting inside the distance. Controlled 5.5% of that fight time. Wins over 101 win, obviously 90 bonus points per win. 72 strength of schedule, 1 of 3 optimal since he has been in the promotion. That again was Dakota Bush, where he put up 112 points. Maheshate, again, another guy that came in super hot, smacking up Steve Garcia, making the optimal lineup in just over a minute. But then he lost to Rafa Garcia. Rafa, don't call me Hafa Garcia. Where he got 6 takedowns put on him and outscored by a ton. So yeah, overall 2 points a minute, allows 4.5 at distance. Very good, much like Borshchev. Inside the distance, almost exactly like Borshchev, but scores even less than Slavaklaus did, allowing well over 7.5 points a minute. 112 is what he put up in the win. Like I said, 96 is what he scored when he lost. Less than 2 strikes landed per minute, so that is not good for a guy that has no ground game. 45% takedown defense. So both of these guys, 45.5% takedown defense, 31% takedown defense. This is kind of what I'm saying. This is going to be if there's any wrestling in this fight, it will be by accident, by complete freaking accident. And Maheshate has controlled 0% of the grappling time he's involved in. Not even has had clinch for a second. 0%. And he has spent, again, not a majority, but a good part of his fights inside the distance at almost 42%. So both of these guys spending a ton of time inside the distance where they can't do anything at all. Less than 60 strength of schedule, not something you want to see, and that is what Maheshate has here. Has made the optimal once out of 2 fights. Obviously, that was his fight against Steve Garcia. Like I said, if there's any wrestling in this fight, it will be by accident. I'm going to go with Borshchev. 8,800 seems like a lot, but again, there should not be any wrestling here. I'm going to go with Borshchev, and I will have some of this fight rostered for sure. I think this one finishes plus 159 inside the distance? Really? That seems off to me, but maybe I need to do more fight tape. But I think this one finishes inside the distance. So what does M.O.N.K think? I know we'll get to that. He picked decision as well. Interesting. All right, well, I'm going to have to do some more fight tape on this one, but I kind of like this one for DraftKings. Both guys give up a ton of points when they lose for the most part, and both of them score a very good amount, over 112 when they win. So give me Borshchev, but I wouldn't be surprised to see either guy hit the ground in this one. And here we've got a couple of UFC veterans at this lightweight scrap. Diego Ferreira, 8,700, going against Michael Johnson, 7,500. We'll start with the Johnson side. 13-14 in the UFC, 10-12 in 3-round lightweight fights, and he is just 2-3 in his last 5. Another Southpaw versus Orthodox fight here. Johnson getting outpaced in his career at the weight class. Just barely, but still getting outpaced. At distance, 2.58 points per minute is what he's scoring, allowing just 1.62, but inside the distance, it's another story. Over 2-1 for his opponents here. Here's the big thing. Again, like we've seen with so many fights here, underwhelming DraftKings points per win numbers, 82.29, and this is over 10 UFC wins, guys. 82 is his average. DraftKings points per loss is nothing special, just 25, but when he does lose, his opponents only score 87.5 points, so that is something to think about there. This could be a very low-scoring fight. 4.2 strikes landed a minute, 81% takedown defense, very good. Subpar grappling numbers, 103 ceiling, 39, almost 40 floor, so a pretty low ceiling, but a decent floor here. And just 3 of those 10 wins I mentioned in the weight class have gone over 100 points, just 3 out of 10, 48 bonus points per win on average. We do have an over 70 strength of schedule, but Michael Johnson has made the optimal lineup in just 1 of his 4 fights at the weight class since 2021. Meanwhile, Diego Ferreira, 3.13 points a minute, allowing just 2.84. At distance, he's outpacing his opponents by over half a point per minute, but inside the distance, not so good. It is pretty even. Not as bad as Johnson is, but He's still getting outpaced inside the distance. Averages over 7 wins, 100.65 per win, gives up almost 100 per loss. 4.69 strikes landed per minute. 62.5% takedown defense, so not quite where Johnson's is, but Johnson's is pretty exceptional at over 81%. Ferreira spends 37.64% of his total fight time inside the distance, controls almost 44% of that time, of decent ceiling at 116 and an okay floor at 26. Let's see here, 4 of his 7 wins at the weight class have been over 100 points, so it is better percentage-wise than Johnson. 67.86 bonus points per win is almost 20 points better than Johnson, and the 76.38 strength of schedule does take the cake as well. Has yet, however, to make the optimal lineup in the weight class in 2 tries since 2021. So overall, not a fan of these numbers, but I think Ferreira has the better, I don't think, he has the better ceiling in my opinion. This one probably goes to decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a late finish, probably from either side. But personally, I'm favoring Diego Ferreira here. This is another, old man fight, 38 versus 36 years old. Ferreira being the older fighter here. I really don't know who to pick. I think this line is probably too wide. I think I'm going to be picking Ferreira, at least in DraftKings, because I think he has a much better ceiling. And in a win, I think he comes closer to scoring 100 points than Johnson does, probably. So give me more Ferreira than Johnson, but I will have some of both sides rostered. Here we've got another welterweight scrap between Joaquin Buckley, 9,300, going against Andre Fialho at 6,900. Guys, right off the bat, I'm noticing this one's at welterweight, where Buckley, has spent his entire career at middleweight. He is dropping down to 170 starting this Saturday. So that is very interesting to note here, and I think these salaries are way, way too wide. The odds here are way too wide. Yes, Fialho has looked pretty bad in his last few fights, dropping 2 in a row to Salikov, Matthews, and then Ferreira a few fights before that. But I think this is a bit of recency bias here. Let's start with Buckley. 2.9, actually 15-6 as a pro, 5-4. All these stats you're seeing are from his middleweight career, his entire UFC career, because I have no welterweight fights for him. So at 185, he is outpacing his opponents by about 0.25 points a minute. At distance by about half a point per minute. Inside the distance, he's getting outscored by 0.7 points a minute. DraftKings points per win, again, another fighter with a bunch of fights at a weight class, and he's scoring less than 100 points, guys. This is less than 95, allowing just 92 when he does lose. 3.87 strikes a minute, 66.67% takedown defense. 20.35% of his total fight time has been spent fighting inside the distance, where he controls 42% of the grappling time. So not the most prolific grappler. Low-ish ceiling and an extremely low floor. 6.74 points. Only 2 of his 5 wins have touched triple digits. 57 bonus points per win. Decent strength of schedule at almost 74, but 0-6 making the optimal since 2021. 0-6, guys. That is quite the dry spell, if you will. Andre Fialho, let's check his numbers out at the welterweight division. Or actually in the UFC, he is 2-3. Welterweight, he's 2-3. Last 5, he's 2-3. Overall, 16-6. Another orthodox southpaw fight here with Fialho is the orthodox fighter. 1.89 points a minute is what he's scoring, and he's getting hit 3.28 points a minute. At distance, he's getting outscored by a point per minute. Inside the distance, he's getting outscored by more than 4 points a minute, guys. It's insanely ridiculous, the amount of points he's been giving up lately. When he does win in his 2 wins, he's averaging almost 110. And when he loses, he's not giving up a ton of points, just 87. So neither guy here giving up many points at all, about 90 on average. 3.17 strikes landed per minute, a very good takedown defense of 71.4. Spent 12.3% of his time fighting inside the distance, controlled only 23% of that time. So neither guy with very good grappling stats at all, but Fialho's are significantly less than Buckley for the most part. 112, almost 113 ceiling, and 3 times the floor that Buckley has. Both of Fialho's wins and the weight class have been triple digits, 90 bonus points per win. So both of his wins have been first round KO finishes, if I had to guess. Yes, Cameron Van Camp and Miguel Baeza. Both of those guys, well, Baeza's not really who we thought he was, and Cameron Van Camp is exactly who we thought he was. 73 strength of schedule, again, so both guys very similar strength of schedules. 2 of 5 optimal since 2021 for Fialho. So one of these guys is making the optimal lineup, and the other one just simply cannot get on it. So I guess I'm going to pick Buckley, but dropping the weight class definitely concerns me. I want to see what he looks like before I put a ton of stock in him. And Fialho needs a rebound fight here. And at 6,900, man, if both of these guys hit hard as hell. If he catches Buckley, and Buckley's been KO'd 3 times in the UFC. Fialho's been KO'd a couple of times as well. So one of these guys I think is going to sleep. Let me see. What do I have for inside the distance? Yeah, minus 239. So Vegas definitely agrees with me. I just think the line is too wide. So I will have both sides rostered. Probably more Fialho than Buckley, though. If either guy wins, I mean, it could be in the first round. Fialho's the one that more consistently scores triple digits, whereas Buckley is just 40%. So give me a bit more Fialho for the upside compared to Buckley. But I think one of these guys is going to sleep, and this should be a fight that you target. And here we've got a 120-pound catchweight fight between Lupita Godinez and Emily Ducote. Ducote was originally slated to fight Polyana Viana, but Viana had to withdraw. So now we've got Lupi stepping in. Short-ish notice, 8,600 for the step-in fighter, 7,600 for Emily Ducote. Godinez 4-3 in the UFC. In catchweight fight, she's 1-0, but the stats you see here are her UFC career stats, I do believe. So, in fact, I'm pretty sure they're her strawweight stats. Emily Ducote, only 2 fights in the UFC, so that's what you see here on the screen as well. So both of these women, their strawweight stats are on the screen, but this one is at catchweight here. Both 29 years old, both the same height. Ducote has 2 inches of reach. Ducote's 1-1 in the UFC, blah, blah, blah. We'll start with Godinez. Overall, she's annihilating her opponents scoring-wise. 4.24 points a minute, allowing less than 2. At distance, it's pretty even, but inside the distance, it's no contest. 4.71 points scored a minute, allowing less than 1 point a minute. When she does win over her 4 UFC wins, it's 102.1, a very impressive number for a female strawweight fighter. When she loses, she scores 44 and allows only 68.9, guys. This is over 3 UFC losses. She gave up 70 to Angie Hill. She gave up 69 to Luana Carolina. Yeah, does not give up a ton of points at all, but scores pretty well. 3.22 strikes landed a minute, 75% takedown defense, spends majority of her fight time fighting inside the distance, and controls 76.81% of that time. An extremely high ceiling, a very high floor. I love Lupita Godinez this week at 8,600. 2 of her 4 wins over 100 points, 45 bonus points a win, 65.8 strength of schedule. So you want to see that higher, but for this card, it's probably about average. And she has made the optimal lineup in 2 tries out of 5 fights since 2021 at the strawweight weight class. So I love the numbers I'm seeing from Godinez. An extremely high ceiling, a very good floor, and a very cheap salary to go with it. Emily Ducote, 7,600. 12-7 as a pro, 1-1 in the UFC. 2.53 is what she's scoring. Her opponents are outscoring her by 0.8 points a minute. She's getting outscored at distance. Inside the distance, and I had to double check this, guys. Emily Ducote in 2 fights has 0 grappling time. None. No time fighting inside the distance. 100% of her fight time has been at distance. 76.5 is what she put up in her win. She put up in her loss less than 30 and gave up 104.4 to Angela Hill, who we will talk about shortly. 6.23 strikes landed a minute, which is good for someone who has no inside the distance time. 100% takedown defense. Again, 0s for the grappling time. Ceiling is bad. Floor is 30 bonus points a win. 62 strength of schedule, so even worse than Lupita Godinez. 0 of 2 optimal. Emily Ducote's been, we'll just say, less than impressive so far in the UFC. Her first fight against Jessica Penne. How do you have 0 grappling time against Jessica Penne? I guess that's good for her. She totally, Jessica Penne is the one that wants to grapple, so, Ducote would not allow it. And Angela Hill, not really known for being a grappler, more of a striker, so I guess I could see that, but 0 is crazy. So give me Lupita Godinez. I mean, 8,600 I think is a steal, again, for the extremely high upside we get. It's great to see in women's fights, but especially in the strawweight division. So give me Godinez for the win, and a ton, maybe not a ton, but a good amount of her probably in DraftKings. Fluffy Hernandez going against Edmund Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan riding high off of his comeback win over Dalcha Lungiambula after dropping 3 fights back in 2021. But he is going against Fluffy Hernandez, so this is no joke. Shahbazyan, known more of as a striker, we'll say, whereas Anthony Hernandez, a very prolific grappler, known for submitting Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter. So Hernandez, 9,400. I love him this week at that salary. His pacing is fantastic, 2-1 pretty much. Over 5 points a minute is crazy. By far the highest we've seen on the card so far. At distance, over 3, but he's allowing almost 4.5. Inside the distance, though, well over 2-1. 5.31 to 2.14. When he wins, I should have mentioned he is 4-2 in the UFC, 4-2 in 3-round middleweight fights. When he wins over those 4 wins, 116.5 is what he's averaging. So extremely high upside, but his floor is very low. This is an all or nothing fighter. In his 2 losses, he's averaging 4 points per loss. 108, almost 109 is what he's giving up. So a ton of points flying around Anthony Hernandez fights. Almost 4 strikes a minute landed, 66.67% takedown defense, which is good for a guy that doesn't mind being on his back. 72% of his fight time fighting inside the distance, and he controls 72% of that time. You love to see that. 131 point ceiling, very low floor with less than 9. So again, all or nothing type fighter here. 3 of his 4 wins over triple digits. 53.75 bonus points a win, 73 strength of schedule, which is very good. And he has made the optimal lineup all 3 times since 2021. That is something to be proud of. Going against Marc-Andre Barriault, Josh Fremd, and Rodolfo Vieira. Absolutely killing it as far as DraftKings goes. So some extremely high upside from Fluffy Hernandez side of things. Edmund Shahbazyan, 3.52 points scored per minute, allowing just 2.4. At distance, 3-1. Inside the distance, 4 to 2.5, so even much better than I thought he would be inside the distance, scoring 107.94 points per win over 5 UFC wins. And I should say he's 5-3 in the weight class. Sorry, 5-3 in the UFC, 5-2 in 3-round middleweight fights. 97 points is all he's allowing when he loses. 3.3 strikes landed a minute, 73% takedown defense, so about 6 points better, 7 points better almost than Anthony Hernandez. Spends 52% of his fight time inside the distance and controls a shockingly high amount of time, 57% of the grappling time. So maybe I should take it back when I say Shahbazyan not good inside the distance, because so far he's over 50%. But he's never fought anybody like Anthony Hernandez. I mean, this is against what? Dalcha, Imavov, Hermanson, Brunson. Those are, I was going to say all strikers, but not really. Brunson, has his moments when he chooses to wrestle, for sure. Ceiling for Shahbazyan, 121, so pretty high. 2 very high ceilings for these guys. 3 of his 5 wins over 100 points. Almost 80 bonus points per win. A 73 strength of schedule, virtually identical with Fluffy Hernandez, but has yet to make the optimal lineup in any of his previous 3 fights, where he only has won 1 of them. But still, put up only 94 points against Dalcha, and he was 9,400. So he's the complete opposite of that this week, quite literally at 6,800. I'm picking Fluffy Hernandez to get the job done here. I think Shahbazyan's grappling numbers did surprise me, but it's not like they were off the charts. They were just higher than I was expecting. But he hasn't fought anyone like Fluffy Hernandez. So if Hernandez comes out here like he usually does, I expect him to not only get the win, but to score pretty well in the process. Finishing Shahbazyan inside the distance would be ideal. So give me Hernandez at 9,400. I like him much better than the $9,700 fighter that's more expensive than him this week, and I do expect to have him in a bunch of lineups. Fight! And in the main event of the evening, we've got Mackenzie Dern 9,100 going against Angela Hill 7,100, a 5-round strawweight fight. We do not have many of those. Mackenzie Dern is 0-2 in 5-round strawweight fights, and Hill is 0-1 in the same. So the stats you see on the screen are from 3-round strawweight fights in their UFC career. I had many more numbers to go off of compared to the 5-rounder. So Dern 7-3 in the UFC. I guess we'll start there. We've got orthodox each here. 38 years old for Hill, 30 years old for Dern. Dern getting outscored just barely overall. At distance, as you would imagine, she's getting outscored by 0.7 points a minute. Inside the distance, she's not scoring as many points as I thought she would, just 2.63 a minute, 1.87 allowed. DraftKings points per win over 7 wins, just 84.5. That is absolutely terrible. When she loses, she gives up only 74, so that's a little bit something to look forward to there. You know, she does not give up a ton of points when she loses. 3.5 strikes landed a minute, 40% takedown defense. Spends 37.5% of her time inside the distance and controls 62% of that time. So I would have expected that number to be a bit higher, but you know, she does spend time on her back, and that's technically getting controlled, even though, you know, she's always searching for that reversal. 103 is her ceiling and a low floor at 14. So in her last 5 fights, she has 3 wins. One of them has been over 100 points, and she's averaging 60 bonus points per win. 75.82 strength of schedule, and she has made the optimal once out of her 2 fights since 2021. Meanwhile, Angie Hill, 10-2 in the UFC. Again, 0-1 in 5-round strawweight fights, but all the stats here are for the 3-round fights. She's scoring 3 points a minute and allowing 3 points a minute. At distance, it's basically the same as well. Inside the distance, virtually identical as well, just getting the edge in both of those categories slightly. DraftKings points per win, just barely better than Mackenzie Dern. 85 points per win over these 10 UFC wins, allowing just 86, almost 87 points when she loses. 5.73 strikes landed a minute, 73% takedown defense, very good. Spends 29% of her total fight time inside the distance, controls only 42% of that time, so that is a bit concerning when you're about to go up against Mackenzie Dern, but we'll see how it shakes out. A very low ceiling and a very high floor of 51.93, so Angie Hill, maybe a good cash play, punt play if you're looking for that. All right, so in her 10 fights that we're showing stats for, it says 33%. It should say 3. So she's gone over 100 points just 3 times out of 10. 36.11 bonus points per win. 74 strength of schedule. Very good. And she has made the optimal lineup just once out of 5 attempts since 2021. So guys, I'm looking forward to this main event. I like the fight. I tend to think this goes the distance. I think I'm maybe picking Hill to win, to be honest. We'll see if Mackenzie Dern can get her usual game going, but I would love to see Angie Hill get it done here for sure. 38 years old over Mackenzie Dern, that would be fantastic. But neither side scores well at all overall. So I will be fading this main event as a whole, probably with more exposure to Angie Hill at the cheap price of $7,100. As usual, before we get out of here, I'd like to share M.O.N.K's picks with you. He did decent last week, 7 of 11. 63.6% overall. That moves us to 121 and 190 for a 63.68% overall. Pretty good number here for the first almost half of the year. But here are M.O.N.K's picks for UFC Vegas 73. If you don't know, M.O.N.K is this thing that I built that makes picks. So these are not my picks. These are based all on stats with a little bit of odds, a ton of stats with a little bit of odds thrown in there as well. So start with the bottom. We've got Themba Gorimbo by finish. We've got Natalia Silva by finish. Chase Hooper by finish. Upset pick, Alir Latifi by finish. Interesting. Orion Cosce by finish. Upset City, 3 in a row. Vanessa Demopoulos over Double K. Maheshate over Slava Claus. And Michael Johnson over Diego Ferreira. Then we've got Buckley getting the finish over Fialho. Loopy getting the decision over Ducote. Fluffy Hernandez finish over Edmund Shahbazyan. And Mackenzie Dern with a decision win in the main event over Angie Hill. Guys, those are M.O.N.K's picks for UFC Vegas 73. And before we get out of here, let's take a look at the M.O.N.K pick of the week, the most owned no-nonsense pick of the week for UFC Vegas 73. And we're going with one that I feel is as close to a guarantee as you can get. We've got Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, 9,400, picking him over Edmund Shahbazyan. I just think he's got a great chance to get a finish here and put up a huge score with a huge DraftKings ceiling that he's bringing into this fight. So the M.O.N.K pick of the week, the most owned, no-nonsense pick of the week is going to be $9,400, Anthony Fluffy Hernandez to get the job done over Edmund Shahbazyan. Let's go. We did it, guys and girls. We made it through all 12 fights on UFC Vegas 73 card. I'm looking forward to this one. It doesn't present much on paper, but after going through the numbers, I am looking forward to a few fights here, especially in the main event. Really hoping to see Angie Hill get it done. So there you go. Any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have about stats. Other than that, guys, there's only one thing left to do. As usual, I want all of you to enjoy the fights. So enjoy, and we will see you in the next one.